and the MCL sprain that he suffered last year that knocked him out for the last 4 games of the season, plus a playoff game in which the Dolphins lost 30-12 by getting shellacked by the Pittsburgh Steelers with Matt Moore as your backup quarterback. You would think that Ryan Tannehill, in the midst of a $95 million contract, would understand the urgency of the moment. You would think the Miami Dolphins would get it. As a result, force him to have surgery, thereby jeopardizing the early part of the season, but nevertheless making sure that he's ready for when games really, really count as the 2017 NFL season progressed. They did not do that. And because they did not do that, Ryan Tannehill, untouched yesterday, running away from Ndamukong Suh, goes down on the sideline, lays down for a considerable period of time, gets up but is helped by trainers, ultimately taken into the locker room. They're talking about how there wasn't necessarily a tear, but in the same breath, he's going to be out for several weeks. He clearly will miss the start of the season. And not only that, the entire 2017 season happens to officially be in a world of jeopardy. And because that's the reality, and you know Matt Moore, who's a savvy veteran, worthy of being a backup on somebody else's roster, can fill in because he knows the system, spearheaded by Adam Gase, the head coach, and all of that stuff. The belief is that because of that, what we have is a situation where Matt Moore can be our quarterback, but in the same breath, let's be clear, even though he could be our quarterback, we might need to go out and get Colin Kaepernick. We've got Malcolm Jenkins of the Philadelphia Eagles saying that owners in this league, anybody who wouldn't want to sign Colin Kaepernick, are nothing but a bunch of cowards. We had Richard Sherman and Michael Bennett for the Seahawks speaking out against those owners in the league, executives in the league, that is, who would not be proponents of bringing Colin Kaepernick on their squad. And although I agree with them, although I wouldn't label owners cowards, I would call them soulless businessmen, not necessarily cowards. They're about their bottom line. They're about making money. It's not that they are afraid, per se, of a public outcry. They're afraid of it affecting their wallets. And as far as I'm concerned, that's business. Any businessman, I don't care who you are, if you're fearful that something's going to affect and drastically influence your bottom line, particularly in a negative fashion, you're not going to be inclined to do it. It's just that simple. There is no way around that. We can slice it any way we want to. Adrian Peterson gets in trouble with the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't do much. They didn't want to let go of that boy. But when sponsors started backing out or threatening to back out, suddenly he was on the commissioner's exempt list, getting paid but still out for the season. This is the way it goes. Ray Rice, even though he only averaged 3 yards a carry his last season, still was 27 years of age and had his whole future ahead of him. What happened? Folks started talking about how it's problematic to have him on your squad. What happened? He wasn't anywhere to be found. It's the real world, ladies and gentlemen. You can slice it any way you want to. It's the real world. Ain't no getting around it. And if Colin Kaepernick is going to affect people's bottom line, they're going to be a bit reluctant. Now, you've got people talking about how Adam Gase is the head coach. And because of that, Jay Cutler for Fox Sports, about to be an announcer for Fox Sports. Maybe he'll go back and play for Adam Gase. He'll be interested because his best year was with Adam Gase as the offensive coordinator in Chicago. Passed for over 3,600 yards. Had 21 touchdowns, just 11 interceptions 2 years ago. Had a QBR of 65. Very, very impressive numbers. I say people who have faith in Jay Cutler need to be drug tested. I'm being real. And I'm not casting aspersions on any other network or the people who work for them. Yes, I work for ESPN. Damn it, I like A-Rod and Pete Rose on baseball. They were passionate about their sports regardless of their checkered past. They were passionate about the sport that they played in and loved, even if they stained it along the way. And them talking about the sport of baseball doesn't rub me the wrong way in any way. It's the one thing they should talk about, baseball. Because nobody would ever question their knowledge of baseball. And they were passionate about it. And they were elite on that level. When has Jay Cutler ever been passionate about football? When has Jay Cutler ever been elite in football? I mean, you want to talk about the very personification of America and what America's supposed to be all about, the land of second chances and beyond. And somehow, some way, people finding ways to make money for themselves. I mean, if this ain't one of the great examples of it, I don't know what is. What the hell has Jay Cutler done? Was average in Denver, was below average in Chicago, showed very little enthusiasm, may be the only quarterback in NFL history we saw who couldn't play in an NFC championship game just 40 minutes away from a Super Bowl. I know it's 60 minutes in a game, but damn it, it was about 40 minutes because he was in there for about 20. I'm talking about 40 minutes away from a Super Bowl appearance and couldn't backpedal in the pocket to throw passes to propel the Chicago Bears to a Super Bowl, but found a way to backpedal on a bicycle on the sideline. I mean, it may be the only quarterback in NFL history that ever did that. So anybody that comes to me talking about Jay Cutler, I don't blame them for being in an uproar about Colin Kaepernick, because Jay Cutler is no Colin Kaepernick. However, there is a flip side as it pertains to the specter of Colin Kaepernick being in a Miami Dolphins uniform. And you know what that is, ladies and gentlemen? 34% of the population in the city of Miami and its outskirts who happen to be of Cuban descent. Got 34% from my man Dan Levitard. He would know. Cuban. And if 34% of the Cuban populace, or 34% of the city of Miami is Cuban, well, this same Colin Kaepernick that kneeled for the national anthem, refused to stand, is also someone who wore a T-shirt in support of Fidel Castro, the former dictator for Cuba. Now, I'm no expert on this subject, and I'm not about to spew and pontificate like I'm some expert, but I believe all the things that I have heard and read and seen about Fidel Castro is that of a dictator who killed and tortured people who a lot of Cubans absolutely positively despise. They view him as a murderer, as a tyrant. I don't know this to be true, but I have heard a couple of Cubans in my lifetime call him their Adolf Hitler. That's what they've said about Fidel Castro. If you're Colin Kaepernick and you wore that T-shirt, they won't forget that. If you're Stephen Ross of the Miami Dolphins, the owner, as socially conscious as he is, in his quest to bring equality to our nation in ways that a lot of people don't know about this guy, you have to take that into consideration too. And if you got to think about all of that, then you find yourself asking that age-old question about Colin Kaepernick, at least over the last year, and that is he worth it? There's something else that I found absolutely positively reprehensible that involves Colin Kaepernick that makes him even less attractive than he was yesterday. I'll explain exactly what that is after the break. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio.
Daddy, where do babies come from? Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Very disgusted watching my New York Yankees last night. Got a new brother coming into town, Sonny Gray. He's ready to handle his business. Gave up 2 earned runs in 6 innings, but 3 errors spoiled his Yankees debut. They're now 2 games back from the Boston Red Sox. No such problem with the Dodgers. No such problems whatsoever. 76-32, 44 games over 500. It's going to be real interesting to see what happens with them. 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Lots of stuff to get into today. Another thing, I got to make sure that I don't forget about this too much. I'm going to be really, really interested in seeing what happens with Aaron Donald in Los Angeles. I mean, brother deserves his money. It would be nice to see him get it. It's going to be real interesting talking to him. Not talking to him, but just talking about that stuff as we as the show progresses today. So stick around. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Prior to going to break, I talked about there being something else that happened with Colin Kaepernick. I don't want to say that I'm definitive about this, but I believe that I am. Apparently, it appears, am I 1,000% sure? No, but it appears that Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend put out a tweet yesterday. And that tweet, for those of you who saw the movie Django, Leonardo DiCaprio was basically a slave owner. Could be very smooth and slick, but also very ruthless in his own right, as slave owners tended to be, of course. And Samuel L. Jackson played the role of a black individual who was what they called the freeman. He worked for Leonardo DiCaprio, but he was not a slave like the other black folks. Black folks would call him something entirely derogatory. Matter of fact, it's the most derogatory thing you could say. A black person could call a black person a house you know what. Can't get no worse than that. For a black person to call you that, there is no greater insult come out of your mouth as a black person to another black person. The N-word from a white person to a black person. But black on black, the house N-word, that resonates. And anybody who saw the movie Django would classify Samuel L. Jackson's character in that movie as exactly that. Matter of fact, when he was asked to do the movie by Quentin Tarantino, Samuel L. Jackson looked at him. He said, "So in other words, you want me to be the worst Negro in American history? That's the role you want me to play." And Samuel L. Jackson, boy, did he play it. He was sensational in that movie. So was Jamie Foxx, by the way. And Kerry Washington. List goes on and on. And Leonardo DiCaprio. He was fantastic, too. And the tweet that was sent out by Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend was of Steve Bisciotti, the owner for the Baltimore Ravens, being hugged by Samuel L. Jackson's character, except Samuel L. Jackson's character was Ray Lewis. So you're basically denigrating not just Bisciotti, but Ray Lewis, because Ray Lewis put out the video about laying low, just get back on the field, be quiet. Now, say what you want about Ray Lewis. Here's what Ray Lewis was doing. Ray Lewis was working behind the scenes, trying to get Colin Kaepernick back on the field. Ray Lewis telling him to be quiet was because Ray Lewis was saying at some point in time when he had his troubles and he pled guilty to obstruction of justice charges back in the year 2000 or so, Ray Lewis was saying it got to a point where he didn't have to talk anymore. Brian Billick did the talking for him. Ozzie Newsome did the talking, along with others. He had to get back on the field because that was the only way he was going to shut people up. And he was just saying that Colin Kaepernick should do the same, that he did his part. Now it's up to us to take the baton and speak on his behalf and on behalf of the issues like racial profiling and police brutality and other things that Colin Kaepernick had alluded to. And the thanks that Ray Lewis got and Steve Bisciotti, the owner for the Baltimore Ravens, got was that tweet. You think the Baltimore Ravens are going to look at Colin Kaepernick now? So you combine that with what's going on in Miami and what Stephen Ross, the owner for the Dolphins, has to take into consideration in terms of the Cuban populace in the city of Miami. If you're Colin Kaepernick's camp, whether it's Colin Kaepernick or his girlfriend or whomever, how does that help you? You see, ladies and gentlemen, it ain't about being quiet. It ain't about being fearful of taking a stance. It's not about standing up for something or being fearful of standing up for something because you don't want to make the requisite sacrifices. It's not about that sometimes. Sometimes it's about the marathon and not the sprint. Sometimes it's about shutting up now so you can scream later. Sometimes it's about having minimal impact now so you can have a profound impact a little while later, rather than cutting off your knees to spite your face. Sometimes it's about playing chess instead of checkers. So you had the support of Ray Lewis, who was working Bisciotti and Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh, or working with Ozzie Newsome and John Harbaugh to work Steve Bisciotti. And now what do you have? Because when we're caught up in moments in our feelings, we got to express ourselves. Good luck, Colin Kaepernick, now. Good luck. 866-729-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. Your phone calls and more in a minute with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
I brought this up just a few minutes ago before I went to break. I brought up the situation of Aaron Donald and his holdout. It's expected to reach its 7th day today. No real end in sight. Reading from an article on ESPNLA.com by Alden Gonzalez, the game's greatest interior lineman. That's what they're calling him. You know, he's in a high-stakes stare down with the Los Angeles Rams. He's under team control for at least 2 more years, set to make a combined base salary of $8.694 million in 2017 and 2018. But he's performed to the level of the game's highest-paid players, a group earning 9-figure salaries on 6-year contracts, and now he wants to be compensated accordingly. Texans defensive end J.J. Watt remains the only starter signed an extension despite completing only 3 NFL seasons. His deal got done in September, too. None of those players held out. Donald is. I get that. I really, really understand it. If you're anybody but the Los Angeles Rams, I'm going to say this to this organization, and I hope they're listening to me. Who the hell do you think you are to sit around and act like you got a right to hold out on anybody? This is football. I side with Aaron Donald 1,000%. Let me count the ways. This Los Angeles Rams team, who are the St. Louis Rams, until last season, a season in which they finished 4-12, a season which started with Jeff Fisher as their head coach, a season that never should have started with Jeff Fisher as their head coach. This same Los Angeles Rams team hasn't made the playoffs since 2005. They're now the Los Angeles Rams, but they were the St. Louis Rams. Let me count the ways. 6-10, 8-8, 3-13, 2-14, 1-15, 7-9, 2-14, 7-8, 7-9, 7-8-1 rather, 7-9, 6-10, 7-9, 4-12. To call them mediocre or inept would be kind. And you got to do that is considered the best, and you're finding him $40,000 a day because he doesn't want to show up and be underpaid by you, and you have a problem with this? You have a problem comprehending this? Now, I'm not one for the holdouts, and I'm not one for costing yourself some money. But, my God, why should you be underpaid, putting yourself at risk for the Los Angeles Rams? Are you kidding me? Really? What the hell do you bring to the table to be trying to play hardball with anybody? Let me be very, very clear. The Rams stink. Period. You might have a few good parts here and there. I happen to meet a couple of employees for the organization who are pretty nice. And I'm a fan of Tavon Austin and Brockers and these boys. I know you got some people that can play, but collectively, you stink. And you holding out on Aaron Donald? Pay this man. Why should he come out on the field and risk himself for you? I mean, for you. You know what this is the equivalent of? This is the equivalent of Beyonce looking forward to taking Jabba the Hutt out for lunch, and he's like, "Yo, man, yeah, but can we go Dutch?" That's what that is. Beyonce taking out Jabba the Hutt. Or you know what? I got a better one. Beyonce taking out Fat Bastard from those from the movies, you know, the spy who shagged me, Austin Powers and stuff like that. That's what this is the equivalent of. And then Fat Bastard talking about I need more. Really? Who are you? You better be happy what you got. You're the Los Angeles Rams. You should be proud and happy you got Aaron Donald. You're lucky he ain't just sit there and say, "Could you please just trade me? I don't even want to be here." I mean, you stink. You can't find a way to win. At least not yet. Moving in the right direction, though, because you got rid of Jeff Fisher. Thank the good Lord somebody had sense. Shouldn't have brought him in. I personally thought he had pictures on Stan Kroenke and ownership there because I didn't understand how he started the season as the head coach personally. Must have had pictures on somebody. But I regress. Started off the show talking about Kaepernick, the Miami Dolphins, got into Aaron Donald a little bit. Sonny Gray with the Yankees. I'm just disgusted that they didn't show up for him last night, but this doesn't vary. They're only 2 games back. I'm not sweating it. They're still winning. They're still winning the East Division. They're still winning the East. American League is. I'm telling you. Remind me, I got to talk about Pete Rose a little bit later on, too. To the phones we go at 866-729-ESPN. Nestor in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A.
What's up?
Listen, I want to just say a little bit something about, Colin Kaepernick. It just drives me nuts because you have somebody here that took a stand. He was bothered, obviously, on what was happening to black people. And then, it seems like we should praise this kind of behavior because you don't have people that do that anymore, You don't have enough of those people. How many more athletes came out to support him and do the same thing? I didn't see that.
Well, they may not have done the same thing, but a slew of NBA players brought attention to the Trayvon Martin fatality and Freddie Gray and and others.
But
and
it's not enough. It's not enough.
That's
And now
not
the
your
guy is
point.
fighting.
Hold it. That wasn't your point. You didn't say it wasn't enough. You said there was nobody doing anything. I'm telling you they did something. If you want them to do more, that's different. But it's not like people haven't done anything. It's not like these athletes haven't expressed some degree of a social consciousness. Now go ahead.
And it just drives me nuts because, they try to twist his story every way you can to attack him. And then the bottom line is he was trying to support something that, that is, you're trying to attack somebody trying to help somebody. Black Lives Matter, they need their support. It's like you're almost waiting for something else to happen to bring awareness to it. Look at what's happening now. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's paying attention to it. I bet you one thing, what happened to those black people, is going to happen again. And it's like, why is it that we have to wait until something else happens to bring awareness to it? You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
It just drives me nuts.
Well, it's going to continue to drive you nuts because that's been going on throughout American history. I don't know where you've been. It's not going to change anytime soon. You just got to get used to it and find a way to conquer it step by step. Bill in Queens, you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Bill.
Hey, how you doing, Steve? First, for starters, sorry for recent passing of your mom. Hope you're doing okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
I think, as a white man, Colin Kaepernick kneels. So now you got my attention. Okay, so what are you going to do next? And this last caller saying, the attention's diverted. Colin Kaepernick did that. He's wearing this clothing that's offending people. He's not voting, which you spoke out against very, very adamantly. And, by the way, if you'll sign him, he'll not kneel. Sounds like a guy of great conviction. He shouldn't be leading the charge. Yes, there is a problem that needs to be addressed, but you can't ignore the fact who's leading the charge. And there are many, many people who can lead this charge and do the right thing and get this problem figured out. But when you kneel, there's going to be negative reactions.
Bill,
he did nothing to help it.
Let me ask you this question, Bill. He absolutely could have done more. Most of us could have. But to me, that's a different conversation. The real conversation, particularly for white Americans in this country, what did he do wrong? Because he did. Hold on, wait a minute. He did exercise his First Amendment rights. Okay.
Right.
He caused no harm. He was peaceful, and he was peacefully disagreeable. So let's be clear. We have situations where people have had justification for being very volatile in their protest in our nation's history, and folks have gotten beyond that. How is it that somebody is peaceful and still we find a way to villainize him? Can you explain that?
I'll say this, because I believe you're correct, because it's two separate conversations, and he was very peaceful. To that, I'll say the tone has turned to the owners, saying the owners are blackballing him. If he is free to kneel and have his peaceful protest, the owners haven't acted ridiculously. Half the teams don't have no need for him, and they don't want him. So
yeah, but you do have owners that have come out publicly, including a Tish with the Giants, that have said he's never seen the level of vitriol that he's received from folks who warned him, don't you even think about bringing that young man to this franchise. And he's not the only one. So you do have that relevance. So since we know that element is real, Bill, what do you think about that?
I'll say as a father, I teach my kids, they treat everybody correctly, everybody fairly. There's no skin color. Your friends are black, white, Asian, whatever.
Okay.
And that's all I can do on my part. As far as Colin Kaepernick's concerned, he had my attention. I don't agree with the kneel. I have great respect for the flag, but I respect the fact that he could have his protest.
So in other words, if you were an owner, Bill, my last question because I got to go. If you were an owner,
right,
would you bring Colin Kaepernick on your team if there was an opening available? Would you let this situation prevent you from bringing him on your team?
I would bring him in and it was talked about on ESPN yesterday. I would bring him in and have a conversation and let's put it all on the table. How do you feel? How do we feel? You have the ability to play baseball. How can we work together to make this work for us? That's what I would do.
Okay. Thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. 866-729-ESPN. More of your calls with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio in a minute.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Whoa. Ah, mercy, mercy me. Ah, things ain't what they used to be. Oh, where the blues. You know, that was Stephen A. Smith in the house, yours truly. I did that because my sister Carmen is in the car right now, who can't sing, by the way. Clearly, it was not a gift that the Lord transferred from my parents to all of their children, because Lord knows I can't sing. She can sing. I like to sing just to get on people's nerves. That's what I like to do. 866-729-ESPN. Back here with the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Back to the phones we go. Let's go to Chris in Brooklyn. What's going on, player? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Steven? How are you?
Turn off your radio so we don't hear my echo, please. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, yes. Hold on one second. I got cops everywhere.
Got me holding on my own show. Man, you better hurry up and get on this air. Go ahead, man. Chris, go ahead, buddy.
I'm here. I apologize. I had cops everywhere. I'm
Just
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead. Make your point. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so listen, I really disagree with you on the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. You know, last week I listened to you every day. I really do respect you. But last week you're calling these backup scrubs that are coming in. Yes, I understand, but let's remember Kurt Warner was bagging groceries and now he's in the Hall of Fame, okay? And Colin Kaepernick happened to be a backup quarterback from UNLV, not highly touted. And before he started kneeling, he was beat out in camp by Blaine Gabbert.
Whoa, Chris. You don't get to make that argument. I was making the argument about guys who are on rosters and have been around who have proven that they're unproductive. I didn't know anything about Kurt Warner until I saw him. I didn't know anything about Colin Kaepernick until I saw him. And, of course, there are certain backups that have come out of, nowhere and have produced on a high level. But it ain't a bunch of them. And the fact of the matter is that Colin Kaepernick has proven that he's worthy of being on a squad before half of these guys. That much is fair to say, Chris. I disagree.
Well, listen, I do. Okay, you know what? You do have a point in that. But as far as his political activism, here's a guy who wants to kneel. And I agree. You know what? I agree with why he was kneeling. But also the fact that then you wear socks with pigs on them as cops. You're not making any situation better. It's really offensive to a lot of different people. If you're going to be it, then be about it.
Chris, stop right there. I agree with you. That is offensive to a lot of people. What I am saying to you, Chris, is this. A league that has alleged rapists and other forms of criminals getting second chances, getting jobs, individuals who have been incarcerated for crimes coming back and being allowed to make a living that a lot of Americans would never get the opportunity to do because obviously they don't have those gifts. This is an individual that regardless of how much he may offend you was peaceful. He was uninhibiting in terms of you watching and enjoying the game of football. He just refused to stand for the national anthem. It didn't impede you in any way. You may not have liked it. Let me ask you this question, Chris. You're trying to tell me what team in professional sports where I can't find somebody that has done or is doing something you absolutely don't like and they're still receiving a paycheck. Tell me one team.
No, I can't. Listen, you're absolutely right. But as far as an owner goes into signing him, what happens if this owner has a veteran in their family? This flag of our country, it stands for a lot of bad things. But
Chris, do you go to work every day, Chris?
Of course, I'm on my way home right now.
You've never been offended by a coworker?
You know what? Offended, but it fundamentally though, if I had something to do with it, where if I didn't agree with it, and it's like if you say something that ESPN doesn't agree with you, they have the right not to renew your contract, correct?
They do They do have the right, but it wouldn't be fair and it wouldn't be prudent if I have the ability to make them money with it. You can't agree with everything everybody does. I mean, listen, okay, I got people that listen. I love most of my coworkers. There's a few folks that I work with that I don't particularly like. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over them. I don't like.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the real world. That's the real world, Chris.
Yeah, but the real world also is if I'm an owner and somebody offends me because you don't stand up for a flag, what happens if one of the owners had a grandfather who died in a war
That's
from
fair.
World War II?
That's fair. And my only response to that, Chris, and I appreciate the call, I got to go. My only response to that is then be consistent. Because criminals and other forms of individuals are on your roster, too, that you may be cutting a check for who you don't agree with and you don't particularly like. But they're getting a check, and they're being allowed to play. Why can't Colin Kaepernick? It's a fair question. Nobody has an answer for that suffices. Hour number 2 up next.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.